Colorado Territory, 1876. The newly constructed train station in Silver Creek stood as a monument to progress, a stark contrast to the untamed wilderness that surrounded it. Dust swirled in the late afternoon light as passengers disembarked, their faces telling stories of long journeys and uncertain futures. Among them was Olivia Fairchild, 23 years old, her chestnut hair pinned beneath a modest black bonnet, her gray traveling dress marking her as a woman in mourning. She clutched a single valise in her gloved hand, exhaustion evident in the shadows beneath her amber eyes. 6 months a widow, with nothing but a letter promising work at a frontier hotel to guide her way. Her husband James had died in a mining accident back east, leaving her with debts, heartache, and a desperate need to disappear from the life she once knew. The frontier is no place for starting over, she whispered to herself, a mantra she had repeated since boarding the train in Boston. Only a place to hide until the pain subsides. This was what Olivia told herself, that she sought only shelter and anonymity, not connection. The war and its aftermath had taken her parents, consumption had claimed her sister, and the mine had stolen her husband. Everyone she loved eventually disappeared, confirming what she had come to believe. Loving meant inevitable loss in this harsh world. Across the street from the station, Zachary Kingston adjusted his hat against the setting sun. At 25, he cut an impressive figure despite his youth, broad-shouldered, tall, with intelligent blue eyes and a clean-shaven face that had already weathered into handsome lines from long days under the western sky. A light stubble shadowed his jawline after several days of travel. The townsfolk of Silver Creek knew him as the territory's most unlikely success story. Orphaned at 16, he had worked cattle drives until discovering silver on what became the Reckoning Mine. For years of smart investments had transformed that lucky strike into an empire of cattle ranches, business interests in Denver, and the largest property in the county, the Windward Ranch. Another year, another fortune. The local banker had remarked earlier that day, reviewing Zachary's accounts. Yet for all his wealth, Zachary believed what his father had told him before dying of frontier fever. Money fills your pockets, son, but emptiness follows the man who rides alone. Still, he had convinced himself that the emptiness was the price of success. The responsibility of his enterprises and the 40 ranch hands who depended on him meant there was no room for personal attachments. A man builds what he can protect, he often said, and protects what he builds. Anything more is just asking to lose it all. He was heading to his waiting carriage when he noticed the woman in gray, standing alone with her single bag as the other passengers were greeted by waiting family or business associates. Something in her posture, a dignified solitude against uncertainty, made him pause. The station master approached her. "Ma'am, you waiting for someone? I was told Mr. Hollister would meet me." From the Silver Spur Hotel. Olivia's voice carried a refined Eastern accent, out of place in the frontier town. "Old man Hollister had a stroke last month," the station master said. "Hotel's been closed since. Didn't nobody write to tell you?" The color drained from Olivia's face. No one wrote. She turned away, her composure cracking only slightly as she surveyed the dusty main street with its wooden storefronts. Her employment, her lodging, her entire plan, gone before she had even properly arrived. The station master shuffled awkwardly. "Boarding house is full up with minors. Could try the saloon, though it ain't suitable for a lady such as yourself." Zachary found himself moving toward them before he had made a conscious decision to intervene. "Problem here, Jenkins?" "Mr. Kingston." The station master straightened. "No, sir. Just explaining to the lady that her arrangements have fallen through." Olivia turned toward Zachary, her eyes momentarily widening at his approach. She quickly composed herself, unwilling to appear desperate before this stranger, handsome though he might be. "I am quite capable of making alternative arrangements," she said with more confidence than she felt. "In Silver Creek?" "At sundown." Zachary raised an eyebrow, taking in her mourning clothes and the fine quality of her gloves. A lady of breeding who clearly had no idea what she had stepped into. "The mining camps sent their men to town today for supplies. Every room and corner will be claimed by now." Frustration and fear warred on Olivia's face. Her carefully laid plans disintegrating left her with few options in a strange, dangerous place. The discipline that had carried her through months of grief threatened to crack. I seem to have miscalculated, she admitted quietly. Something in her dignified vulnerability stirred Zachary. This was not some frontier adventure seeker, but a woman clearly running from something, or towards something, with determination. Mrs., he prompted. Fairchild. Olivia Fairchild, she replied, lifting her chin slightly. Zachary Kingston. He tipped his hat. Where are you from, Mrs. Fairchild? Boston, most recently. Her tone suggested she had no intention of elaborating. A gust of wind swept dust across the platform, and Olivia turned her face away, momentarily looking lost against the backdrop of mountains turning purple with twilight. When she turned back, her voice was barely audible. I suppose I am rather lost. The words seemed to surprise her as much as him, a confession she had not intended to make. For Zachary, they stirred something unexpected, a recognition of a loneliness that mirrored his own carefully concealed solitude. Then follow me home, he said, the offer emerging before he could consider its implications. Olivia stared at him, suspicion replacing vulnerability. I beg your pardon. Zachary realized how his words had sounded. Forgive me, Mrs. Fairchild. I meant to offer proper accommodation. My housekeeper, Mrs. Winters, maintains rooms for guests at Windward Ranch. You would be under her supervision, with all propriety observed, until you determine your next steps. The offer hung between them, unexpected and yet somehow inevitable, a moment when the frontier's harsh rules of survival met its deeper code of assistance to those in need. Olivia studied him, weighing her limited options against the risk of trusting this stranger. And you are? The owner of Windward Ranch and several businesses here in Silver Creek, Jenkins supplied helpfully. Mr. Kingston is our most prominent citizen, ma'am. Zachary almost smiled at the formality. What Jenkins means is that I'm unlikely to damage my reputation by offering improper hospitality to a lady in distress. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of two people who had built careful fortresses around themselves. I would be grateful for temporary lodging, Mr. Kingston, Olivia finally said, until I can make other arrangements. As his driver loaded her modest baggage onto his carriage, neither Zachary nor Olivia could have imagined how this simple act of frontier courtesy would unravel everything they believed about themselves and the lives they had chosen. The Windward Ranch sprawled across a valley 20 minutes from town, its white-painted main house rising 2 stories with a broad porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Gas lamps illuminated the windows as Zachary's carriage approached, the last light of day having faded behind the mountains. Your home is quite impressive, Mr. Kingston, Olivia remarked, breaking the silence that had settled between them on the journey. Built it 2 years ago, he replied. The original cabin still stands out back. Couldn't bring myself to tear it down. Sentimental value? A reminder. He didn't elaborate further, but nodded toward the house. Mrs. Winters will show you to your room. I have business to attend to in my study. His abrupt shift to formality wasn't lost on Olivia. She had seen it before, the careful distance men of business maintained, the walls they built. James had been the same in the months before his death, retreating into work as their finances crumbled. Mrs. Winters proved to be a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who showed Olivia to a comfortable room with a private bath, luxury beyond what she had expected to find in the territory. Dinner's at 7, the housekeeper informed her. Mr. Kingston takes punctuality seriously. Does he have family joining us? Olivia asked, unpacking her modest belongings. Mrs. Winters's expression softened slightly. No, ma'am. Just the 2 of you tonight. Mr. Kingston dines alone most evenings. She hesitated. It's not my place to say, but it does this house good to have a guest. Too much space for one man, if you ask me. After Mrs. Winters departed, Olivia changed from her traveling clothes into her second-best dress, navy blue, still somber enough for a widow, but less severe than her gray traveling outfit. She had packed little beyond necessities, having sold most of her possessions to pay James's debts. At dinner, Zachary proved a polite if reserved host, inquiring about her journey but carefully avoiding personal questions. Olivia found herself studying him when he wasn't looking. The way his eyes crinkled slightly when the housekeeper chided him for working too much, the confident yet unassuming way he carried himself. Not at all like the Eastern businessmen she had known, who wore their success like armor. I understand you have business interests beyond ranching, she said as they were served dessert. The ranch is my heart, but diversification provides security, he replied. Mining investments, a share in the new bank, some real estate in Denver. Very prudent. The West takes as quickly as it gives, Mrs. Fairchild. A lesson I learned early. He set down his fork. And what brings you to our territory? Silver Creek is hardly a destination for Eastern ladies. Olivia had prepared for this question. A fresh start. My husband's passing left me in circumstances that required adaptation. My condolences on your loss. His tone was genuine. Thank you. She kept her expression composed. The position at the hotel seemed providential. Room and board plus wages in exchange for managing the ledgers and correspondence. You have experience with such work? My father was an accountant. He taught me his trade, though it was never expected I would need to use those skills. The bitter irony of that miscalculation wasn't lost on her. Zachary nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps a fortunate education, given your circumstances. Indeed. She set her napkin beside her plate. Mr. Kingston, while I appreciate your hospitality, I must ask, are there other employment opportunities in Silver Creek? I cannot impose on your generosity indefinitely. Something flickered across his face. Hesitation, perhaps, or an idea taking shape. As it happens, Mrs. Fairchild, I have been seeking someone to organize my business correspondence and accounts. My enterprises have outgrown my ability to manage them alone. Olivia straightened. Are you offering me employment? Consider it a mutually beneficial arrangement. You need work. I need someone with exactly your skills. He leaned forward slightly. You would have your own office in the East Wing, appropriate compensation, and could continue to stay here until you find suitable accommodations in town, if that is your preference. The offer was unexpected but not unwelcome. Still, Olivia hesitated. You know nothing about me beyond what I've told you. I consider myself a good judge of character, Mrs. Fairchild. Besides, anyone desperate enough to travel alone to a mining town for employment is either running from something significant or possesses remarkable determination. Either quality suggests you won't disappoint. His assessment was uncomfortably perceptive. And if I am running from something, we all are, in one way or another. The West forgives much if you prove your worth going forward. He stood, signaling the end of dinner. Consider my offer. We can discuss terms tomorrow. That night, Olivia stood at her bedroom window, gazing across the moonlit ranch toward the mountains. The vastness of the landscape both terrified and exhilarated her. In Boston, she had felt entombed by grief and debts. Here, possibility stretched before her, as did danger. Taking the position meant staying at Windward, in proximity to a man who already unsettled her carefully maintained composure. Yet returning to Silver Creek meant uncertainty and likely improper accommodations. The practical choice was clear, even if it meant navigating the unfamiliar territory of working closely with Zachary Kingston. A business arrangement, she whispered to herself. Nothing more. 3 weeks later, Olivia had transformed Zachary's study from a chaotic repository of contracts, ledgers, and correspondence into an efficient office. She discovered that his business empire was even more extensive than town gossip suggested. Mining interests throughout the territory, cattle operations stretching into Wyoming, and investments in the railroads that were rapidly connecting the frontier to eastern markets. Working with him proved both challenging and unexpectedly satisfying. Zachary's mind was quick, his business instincts remarkable for someone with no formal education. He respected her suggestions and implemented several of her organizational systems without question. What surprised Olivia most, however, was the growing ease between them. Their conversations over ledgers gradually extended to discussions over dinner, about books they had read, observations about the territory's development, and occasionally, carefully edited stories from their pasts. She learned that he had worked cattle drives from Texas before discovering silver, that he spoke passable Spanish from his time along the border, and that despite his wealth, he still rode out with his ranch hands when they moved cattle to summer pastures. Most men in your position would delegate such work, she observed one evening as they sat on the porch, watching a thunderstorm roll across the valley. Most men in my position never did the work themselves, he replied. I can't ask men to respect me if I won't ride the same trails or face the same weather. Lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating his profile. Besides, There's a certain honesty in physical labor that ledgers don't provide. Olivia found herself watching him more often. The way his expression softened when speaking to his horses, his patience with the youngest ranch hands, the respect he showed Mrs. Winters. The image she had constructed of the wealthy, isolated rancher began to complicate itself with these observations. For Zachary, Olivia's presence had transformed Windward from a place he occupied to something that increasingly felt like a home. Her voice carried through hallways that had known only echoes. Her methodical organization brought order to aspects of his business he had neglected. Even Mrs. Winters commented on the improvement. "Never seen the place run so smooth," the housekeeper remarked. "Mrs. Fairchild knows how to manage a household proper." Yet Zachary maintained careful boundaries. He had offered employment and lodging to a widow in need, nothing more. His growing awareness of her, the lavender scent that lingered in rooms she had occupied, the musical quality of her rare laughter, the intensity with which she focused on tasks, was a complication he hadn't anticipated and didn't welcome. Everything changed the afternoon Zachary returned early from inspecting a property line and found Olivia in the small family cemetery on a hill behind the main house. She stood before a simple marker, her head bowed, unaware of his approach. "My parents," he said quietly, not wanting to startle her. "Frontier fever took them both within a week of each other when I was 16. Olivia turned, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I was walking and found this place. I shouldn't have intruded." No intrusion. They would have appreciated the company. He moved to stand beside her, looking down at the weathered stones. Father was determined to build something lasting. Mother just wanted him to be happy. They never saw what became of their sacrifice. "They would be proud," Olivia said softly. "What you've built here would mean nothing to them compared to knowing I found happiness." A confession he hadn't intended to make. "At least, that's what my mother would say." "And have you found happiness?" The question hung between them, unexpectedly intimate. When Zachary looked at her, something shifted in his perception. Not his employee standing before him, but a woman whose strength and grace had gradually worked their way past his carefully constructed defenses. "I've found purpose," he answered finally. "It's been enough." "Yes," she agreed, looking back at the graves. "Purpose has been my refuge as well." Thunder rumbled in the distance, and Zachary glanced at gathering clouds. "Storm's coming. We should head back." They were halfway to the house when the skies opened. Without thinking, Zachary grabbed Olivia's hand, and they ran toward the shelter of the porch, arriving breathless and soaked. Mrs. Winters appeared with towels, clicking her tongue at their state. "Honestly, Mr. Kingston, caught in the rain like children." But Zachary barely heard her. He was watching Olivia laugh as she tried to wring water from her skirts, a full, unrestrained laugh unlike anything he had heard from her before. Her careful composure had washed away with the rain, revealing a vitality that transformed her face. In that moment, watching her with rain-darkened hair and flushed cheeks, Zachary realized he was in dangerous territory. This woman had begun to feel essential in ways that extended far beyond her skills with ledgers and correspondence. The ringing of the telephone in his study broke the spell. One of the few in the territory, the device usually signaled urgent business. Excusing himself, Zachary went to answer it, leaving Olivia to Mrs. Winters's fussing. The call brought troubling news. A banking panic in Denver was threatening several of his investments. He would need to leave for the city immediately to protect his interests. "I must depart for Denver tonight," he informed Olivia over a hastily arranged early dinner. "Financial matters require my immediate attention. I may be gone for 2 weeks, possibly longer." Of course, she maintained her professional demeanor, though something like disappointment flickered in her eyes. "Should I continue with the quarterly accounting in your absence?" "Please. And there's a land purchase agreement in the right drawer of my desk that needs review." He hesitated. "I trust your judgment completely, Mrs. Fairchild. Act as you see fit in my absence." The level of trust implicit in his statement wasn't lost on Olivia. "I will ensure everything runs smoothly until your return." As his carriage prepared to depart for the train station, Zachary found himself reluctant to leave. Standing on the porch steps, Olivia looked more settled at Windward than he had ever felt himself, despite building it with his own hands. "Be careful in Denver," she said. "Financial panics bring out desperation in men. I've weathered worse." He held her gaze longer than necessary. "Take care of Windward." "I will." A pause, then softly. "And who takes care of you, Mr. Kingston?" The question caught him off guard with its perception. Before he could formulate a response, his driver called that they would miss the train if they delayed further. As the carriage pulled away, Zachary looked back to see Olivia standing on the porch, her figure growing smaller with distance. For the first time since building Windward, he felt a strange reluctance to leave it behind. Zachary's absence stretched from 2 weeks into 3 as the banking situation in Denver proved more complex than anticipated. His letters arrived regularly, keeping Olivia informed of developments and providing instructions for business matters requiring attention. She found herself reading these communications with increasing anticipation, noting the way his formal tone gradually relaxed into more personal observations about Denver society and his frustrations with Eastern bankers who understood nothing of territorial economics. In his absence, Olivia grew more comfortable at Windward. She worked efficiently through the accounting tasks, but also found herself increasingly involved in the daily operations of the ranch. When the cook fell ill, she stepped in with recipes remembered from her mother. When one of the youngest ranch hands received news of his mother's illness, she advanced him wages from the accounts and arranged transportation to his family in Kansas. Mrs. Winters observed these changes with quiet approval. "You've got a way about you, Mrs. Fairchild. This place needs that feminine touch." "I'm merely ensuring Mr. Kingston's return finds everything in order," Olivia replied, though she knew her involvement had become more than professional efficiency. The truth was that Windward had begun to feel like the home she had lost, not just shelter, but a place of purpose and belonging. The dangerous part was how central Zachary had become to that feeling, his absence highlighting how much she had come to value his company. Foolish heart, she chided herself one evening, realizing she had read the same paragraph of his letter 3 times. He offers employment, not attachment. The most unexpected development came when Thomas Harding, the banker in Silver Creek, arrived one afternoon requesting to speak with whoever is managing Mr. Kingston's affairs. Assuming he sought Zachary's ranch foreman, Olivia was surprised when Mrs. Winters showed him to her office. "Mrs. Fairchild," Harding said, removing his hat. "I understood Mr. Kingston left his business matters in your capable hands." "He did, yes." Olivia straightened papers on her desk, projecting confidence she didn't entirely feel. "How may I assist you, Mr. Harding?" "A rather delicate situation has arisen regarding the Morrison property adjacent to Windward's northern boundary." He placed a folder on her desk. "The owner has encountered financial difficulties and must sell immediately. Mr. Kingston expressed interest in this land previously, but with him unavailable and the seller requiring funds within the week." Olivia opened the folder, scanning the details. The property would complete Windward's northern holdings, securing water rights that Zachary had mentioned were strategically important. The price, while substantial, aligned with valuations she had seen in his records. "Mr. Kingston authorized me to make decisions in his absence," she said carefully. "This appears to be an opportunity he would wish to secure." Harding looked skeptical. "The purchase requires significant capital, $5,000. Perhaps waiting for Mr. Kingston's return would be prudent, by which time another buyer will have claimed the property." Olivia closed the folder decisively. "I will need to review the water rights documentation and boundary surveys before proceeding, but assuming they are in order, we can complete the transaction this week." The banker's expression registered surprise at her confidence. "Very well, Mrs. Fairchild. I'll have the complete documentation sent over tomorrow." After verifying the documents against Zachary's records and consulting with his foreman about the property's condition, Olivia authorized the purchase. The decision felt momentous, her first significant action that went beyond simply maintaining Zachary's affairs to actively expanding them. That evening, she drafted a detailed letter explaining her decision, suddenly anxious about having overstepped. What if his interest in the property had changed? What if the banking troubles in Denver had altered his financial position? Her worry proved unnecessary. A telegram arrived 2 days later. "Morrison purchase excellent stop perfect timing in term stop returning next Tuesday stop Zachary." The approval lifted a weight from her shoulders. More significant than the validation of her decision, however, was the flutter of anticipation at the news of his return. For weeks of separation had clarified feelings she had been trying to ignore. She had grown to care for Zachary Kingston far beyond the boundaries of professional respect. The realization terrified her. She had come to the territory to rebuild her independence, not to attach her future to another man, especially one whose wealth and position were so far removed from her own circumstances. Yet the thought of eventually leaving Windward for separate accommodations in town, as propriety would eventually demand, left her with an unexpected sense of loss. Zachary's return was delayed by 2 days due to railroad difficulties. When his carriage finally approached late Thursday evening, Olivia found herself checking her appearance in the hallway mirror, a vanity she immediately chided herself for. She greeted him in the foyer with professional composure, hands clasped before her to hide their slight trembling. "Welcome home, Mr. Kingston. I trust your business concluded successfully." Eventually, he looked tired but pleased to be back, his eyes warming as they settled on her. "Though I would have preferred to avoid the Denver social obligations that accompanied it. Denver society found you an eligible bachelor, I imagine." The observation slipped out before she could censor it. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "They found me a curiosity, the rough-hewn mining millionaire from the territories. Their daughters were paraded before me like prize cattle. And none caught your interest?" Again, the question was more personal than she intended. "My interests lie here at Windward." Something in his gaze made her breath catch. "I understand you've been expanding those interests admirably." The shift back to business steadied her. "The Morrison property presented an opportunity one believed you wouldn't want to miss." "I hope I didn't overstep." "Quite the contrary." He removed his hat, running a hand through hair that had grown slightly longer during his absence. "You secured terms better than I could have negotiated myself." Harding was quite impressed. "Said you reviewed the water rights documentation like a seasoned rancher." "I simply applied what I've learned from your records." She hesitated. "There's fresh coffee in the study if you'd like to review what else has transpired during your absence." "Gladly. Though I suspect Windward has run more efficiently without me to disrupt your systems." In the study, Olivia presented a concise accounting of the month's business. Contracts renewed, correspondence handled, ranch operations supervised. Zachary listened attentively, asking occasional questions that revealed his sharp understanding of details most owners would overlook. "You've done exceptional work, Olivia," he said when she finished, using her given name for the first time. The intimacy of it hung in the air between them. "Thank you." She gathered her notes, suddenly needing distance from his proximity. "You must be tired from your journey. We can continue tomorrow." "Wait." He rose as she stood to leave. "There's something I've been considering during my time in Denver." Her heart quickened inexplicably. "Yes." The Morrison purchase highlighted something I've known for some time. Windward has grown beyond what one person can effectively manage. He moved to stand before her. "I would like to offer you a permanent position as my business manager, with appropriate compensation and profit participation." The offer was generous, far exceeding anything she could have hoped for professionally. Yet disappointment washed through her. Had she misread something in his manner? "That's very generous," she managed. "You've proven yourself invaluable." His eyes held hers. "To Windward. And to me." The addition shifted something between them. Olivia found herself unable to look away from his gaze, which held questions beyond business arrangements. "I should consider your offer carefully," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Of course." He stepped back slightly. "Take all the time you need." That night, sleep eluded Olivia. The professional opportunity Zachary offered would secure her future beyond anything she could have imagined when stepping off the train in Silver Creek. Yet accepting meant permanently defining their relationship as employer and employee, a boundary that would preclude anything more personal developing between them. The following days brought a return to their established routine, though subtle changes emerged. Zachary sought her input more frequently, not just on business matters, but on improvements to Windward itself. Their conversations lingered longer after dinner, expanding beyond practical concerns to philosophical discussions about the territory's future and their places within it. One evening as they walked the grounds after dinner, Zachary guided her toward a rise overlooking the ranch. "I had a thought while in Denver," he said as they reached the vantage point. "What do you think of adding a conservatory to the east wing? The winter months here are beautiful but confining." "A conservatory?" Olivia looked at him in surprise. "That seems rather permanent." "Windward is my permanent home." He gestured toward the main house, golden with lamplight against the darkening landscape. Though it's never felt properly complete, the observation seemed weighted with meaning she couldn't quite interpret. It's a magnificent property. A house, certainly. But a home requires more than walls and furnishings. He turned toward her. When I returned from Denver and saw how seamlessly you had integrated yourself into every aspect of Windward, I realized what's been missing. Olivia's breath caught. Mr. Kingston, Zachary, please. After all this time, formality seems unnecessary between us. Zachary. His name felt intimate on her lips. What are you suggesting? Before he could answer, hoofbeats approached rapidly from the direction of the main road. A rider appeared, his horse lathered from hard riding. Mr. Kingston, the man called, reining in his mount. Urgent news from town. The Denver banks have failed, accounts frozen. Telegram arrived for you at the station. The peaceful moment shattered. Zachary's expression hardened as he took the telegram, reading it quickly in the fading light. Damn, he muttered. The collapse is worse than anticipated. My Denver holdings may be compromised. He turned to Olivia, professional concern replacing the personal warmth of moments before. I need to review our exposure immediately. This could impact everything. The financial crisis consumed the next several days. Zachary worked tirelessly, sending and receiving telegrams, reviewing contingency options, and considering which assets might need liquidation to maintain essential operations. Olivia worked alongside him, her accounting skills proving crucial as they assessed Windward's financial position. The situation was serious but not catastrophic. Zachary's diversified investments provided buffer against complete ruin. We can weather this, she assured him late one night as they reviewed figures by lamplight. The cattle operation remains profitable, and the mining interests are separate from the Denver banks. Windward will survive, he agreed, rubbing exhausted eyes. But I may need to sell the Denver properties at a loss to maintain liquidity. Something in his defeated tone made her reach across the desk, briefly touching his hand. You built this once from nothing. Even if the worst happens, you have the knowledge to rebuild. He turned his hand beneath hers, capturing her fingers. Your confidence means more than you know. The touch, simple as it was, sent warmth coursing through her. For a breathless moment, the ledgers and financial concerns faded into the background as their eyes held. A knock at the study door broke the connection. Mrs. Winters entered with fresh coffee, eyeing their quickly separated hands with poorly concealed interest. Telegram just arrived by special messenger, she announced, placing an envelope beside the coffee tray. The contents brought unexpected relief. Zachary's primary banking connection in San Francisco was offering emergency financing to secure his position, recognizing the long-term value of his enterprises. This buys us time to reorganize without devastating losses, he said, relief evident in his voice. We'll need to restructure several holdings, but the core remains secure. That's wonderful news. Olivia's smile reflected genuine happiness for him rather than merely professional satisfaction. Zachary studied her for a moment. You haven't yet answered my offer of permanent employment. The abrupt return to that topic caught her off guard. I've been considering it carefully. And your thoughts? How could she explain that her hesitation stemmed not from professional concerns, but personal ones? That accepting a formal employment relationship meant acknowledging boundaries she found herself increasingly reluctant to maintain? I'm grateful for the opportunity, she began carefully, but I wonder if it's the right arrangement for either of us long-term. Confusion crossed his face. Your work has been exemplary. If compensation is the issue, it isn't about money. She gathered her courage. During your absence, I realized how much Windward has come to mean to me, not as employment, but as home. The admission hung between them, more revealing than she had intended. And during my time in Denver, he said slowly, I realized that Windward without you no longer feels like home to me either. The room seemed to still around them, the confession shifting the careful balance they had maintained. What are you saying, Zachary? He stood, moving around the desk to stand before her. I'm saying that the position I truly wish to offer you has nothing to do with employment. Hope and fear tangled in her chest. I don't understand. I think you do. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made denial impossible. When I saw you standing on that train platform, lost, alone, but still so determined, something in me recognized you. Not just as someone who needed help, but as someone who might understand what I've built here and why. Zachary, please, let me finish. He took her hands in his. I've spent years building Windward, convincing myself that success was enough, that the emptiness was simply the cost of achievement. Then you arrived, and gradually, everything changed. The house became warmer. The future became something to anticipate rather than simply plan for. Emotion tightened her throat. I came here seeking independence, not attachment. I told myself I would never again risk losing someone She stopped, unable to complete the thought. Someone you loved, he finished gently. I understand that fear better than you know. My parents, my first business partner, everyone I cared for disappeared until I convinced myself it was safer to build walls than bridges. Then why risk it now? She whispered. Because some risks are worth taking. His hands tightened on hers. Because in trying not to lose anything more, I've realized I'm losing everything that matters. The truth of his words resonated with her own unacknowledged feelings. Her carefully constructed independence had become another kind of prison, protection from loss, but also from connection. Before she could respond, urgent knocking interrupted them again. This time, it was Zachary's foreman, his expression grave. Sorry to disturb you, boss, but there's trouble. Lester Morrison claims the water rights document in the property sale was altered. He's in town threatening legal action to reclaim the land. Says Mrs. Fairchild knowingly purchased fraudulent deeds. That's absurd, Olivia protested. I reviewed those documents thoroughly. Morrison lost everything in the bank collapse, the foreman explained. Word is he's desperate to recover any assets he can. Zachary's expression hardened. This is a nuisance claim, nothing more. There's more, sir. He's been drinking heavily at the saloon, making accusations about Mrs. Fairchild's character, suggesting improper arrangements here at Windward. Color drained from Olivia's face. The frontier's unforgiving judgment of a widow living under a bachelor's roof, even with a housekeeper present, was a threat she had pushed from her mind. He's trying to force me to compensate him by threatening scandal, she realized aloud. He's made a serious miscalculation. Zachary's voice was dangerously calm. Have my horse saddled immediately. What are you going to do? Alarm colored Olivia's question. Clear your name and end this threat. Morrison won't be the first desperate man who tried to extort me. Zachary, no? Violence will only give credence to his accusations. She gripped his arm. This isn't just about the water rights, or even his slander. My presence here has created vulnerability for you and Windward. Your presence here is not negotiable. The fierceness in his tone startled her. But my reputation, and by extension, yours, can be addressed another way. His expression shifted from anger to sudden decision. There's one solution that resolves everything at once. Understanding dawned slowly. Zachary, you can't mean, marry me, Olivia. The proposal, blunt and unexpected, silenced the room. Even the foreman looked startled. That's not a solution, she managed finally. That's an impulse born of crisis. Is it? Zachary challenged. Or is it simply the crisis revealing what I've been too cautious to acknowledge? I don't want you as my employee. I want you as my partner. In Windward, in business, in life. You can't possibly know that after such a short acquaintance. I know that Windward was never truly complete until you arrived. I know that my return from Denver meant nothing until I saw you waiting. And I know that the thought of you leaving, whether due to Morrison's threats or professional propriety, is more devastating than any financial collapse. His raw honesty stripped away her carefully constructed defenses. The truth she had been avoiding confronted her directly. She had fallen in love with this man, against every cautious instinct and practical consideration. This isn't how I imagined a proposal, she said finally, voice unsteady. I doubt anything about either of our lives has proceeded as imagined. A hint of his usual confidence returned to his smile. The question remains, Olivia Fairchild. Will you marry me? Not to solve a crisis, but because somewhere between that train station and this moment, we found something neither of us expected to find again. The foreman cleared his throat awkwardly. I'll just wait outside then. After he departed, Olivia studied Zachary's face, searching for any hesitation or doubt. She found only certainty, and something deeper that mirrored her own carefully guarded feelings. If I say yes, she said carefully, it would be for reasons that have nothing to do with Morrison's threats or conventional propriety. I would accept no other motivation. And if I require time to consider such a life-altering decision, I would respect your need for careful deliberation while hoping fervently for a favorable outcome. His smile softened. Though I would prefer that deliberation not extend indefinitely, given Morrison's current activities in town. Despite the seriousness of the situation, Olivia found herself smiling. You're impossible. I'm determined. There's a difference. He took her hands again. Olivia, from the moment you whispered that you were lost, something in me recognized where you belonged. Here, at Windward. With me. The simple truth of his words dissolved her final reservations. Then yes. Yes. His hands tightened on hers. Yes, I will marry you. Not to silence gossip or secure my position, but because I love you. Because somehow, in trying to rebuild my independence, I found something far more valuable. The joy that transformed his face made her heart contract. He pulled her into his arms, his kiss conveying everything words had failed to express: tenderness and passion, certainty and promise. When they separated, breathless, Zachary pressed his forehead to hers. We should still address Morrison tonight. His slander against you requires immediate response. Together, Olivia insisted. Whatever challenges Windward faces, we face as partners now. Within the hour, they rode into Silver Creek side by side, presenting a united front that caused heads to turn as they entered the saloon where Morrison continued his increasingly drunken allegations. Morrison, Zachary called, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. I understand you have concerns about our recent transaction. The man turned, unsteady on his feet. Kingston, come to defend your fancy Eastern bookkeeper? Or is she something more? His insinuation caused murmurs among the patrons. Mrs. Fairchild is my fiancée, Zachary announced clearly. Our engagement precedes the property purchase, which was conducted with complete transparency and legal documentation. Morrison sneered. Convenient timing. Mr. Morrison, Olivia stepped forward, her voice steady despite the intimidating environment. I understand the bank collapse has caused you significant hardship. However, questioning my professional integrity or my personal character won't recover your losses. Zachary placed a document on the table between them. This is a copy of the water rights agreement, with the bank's certification stamp and witness signatures. Examine it carefully, then decide if you wish to pursue your claims in court, where your current slander would also be addressed. The saloon remained silent as Morrison reviewed the document, his expression shifting from belligerence to resignation as he recognized the legitimacy of the transaction. The property is legally transferred, Zachary continued. However, in recognition of your current circumstances, Windward Ranch is prepared to offer you a position managing the northern section, including residence in the existing cabin. Your knowledge of the land would be valuable to our operation. The unexpected offer, a blend of generosity and practical business, caught Morrison off guard. Why would you do that after what I've said? Because harboring resentment serves neither of us, Olivia answered. And because everyone deserves the opportunity to rebuild after loss. Morrison stared at them for a long moment before nodding slowly. I'd be a fool to refuse. As they rode back to Windward under a canopy of stars, Olivia felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. That was a remarkable solution. It seemed appropriate, Zachary replied. Morrison needed dignity more than charity, and we can use his expertise. We, she repeated, savoring the word. I'm still adjusting to that perspective. He reached across the space between their horses, taking her hand. As am I. But I find I prefer we to I in ways I never anticipated. When did you know, she asked, that this was more than a convenient arrangement or professional respect? The moment I returned from Denver, he admitted. Seeing you standing in the foyer, Windward finally looked like the home I've been trying to build all these years. For me, it was during your absence, Olivia confessed, realizing that without you, Windward was just a beautiful house rather than a place I belonged. They married 2 weeks later in Silver Creek's small church, with Mrs. Winters beaming approval from the front pew and the ranch hands dressed in their Sunday best. Olivia wore a dove-gray dress with subtle lace trim, still respectful of her previous marriage but deliberately not mourning attire. No more black or gray after today, she had told Mrs. Winters while dressing. The past has been honored. Now we look forward. The simple ceremony reflected their shared values, straightforward vows exchanged with clear-eyed certainty rather than flowery sentiments or elaborate promises. Judge Harmon, who performed the service, remarked afterward that he'd rarely seen a couple so perfectly matched in practical outlook and quiet determination. The celebration at Windward afterward brought together the town's business leaders, neighboring ranchers, and all the ranch employees and their families. Olivia moved through the gathering with natural grace, already comfortable in her role as mistress of Windward. "You've transformed this place," Thomas Harding commented, watching ranch hands and townspeople mingling comfortably on the expansive lawn. Kingston was respected before, but isolated. Now Windward feels like the heart of the community. "That was always its potential," Olivia replied. "Zachary built something remarkable. I simply helped open the doors wider." As evening fell and the last guests departed, Zachary found his bride standing on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of purple and gold. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "Not one." She turned to him with a smile that still caught his breath. "Though I am contemplating our future." "And what do you see in that future, Mrs. Kingston?" He drew her into his arms. "Windward growing. Perhaps children someday. Definitely that conservatory you mentioned." Her eyes held his, reflecting the same certainty he felt. Most importantly, a true partnership, in business and in life. "That sounds like a future worth building." He kissed her gently. "Though I believe it begins with the present moment." As twilight deepened into night, Olivia and Zachary Kingston stood together on the porch of the home they now truly shared. Behind them, Windward Ranch spread across the valley, no longer just a successful enterprise, but the foundation of something far more valuable, a life built together, stronger for having found each other when both believed such connection impossible. From that first meeting at the train station, a lost widow and a solitary millionaire, to this moment of shared purpose and profound connection, they had discovered the truth that the Colorado frontier had taught countless others, that sometimes the greatest treasures are found not in silver mines or cattle empires, but in the courage to build bridges across the chasms of loss and loneliness. And when Olivia had whispered she was lost, and Zachary had said, "Then follow me home," neither could have imagined that home would become not a place but a connection, one that would sustain them through whatever challenges the frontier might bring.